What's up, everybody? Welcome into the F6 Football Podcast. We got Cam Copeland here as always, and we are with Alex Rogalin. Now, I know we are coming to you a bit later in the week than usual. We are recording this on Friday evening. There's a bit of a family emergency that came up, but all is well at this time. And I will be doing most of the talking. And the reason is, Alex, why don't you tell him, how are you doing today?
I'm here, everybody. You can hear my voice is not as enthusiastic about this podcast show today as I am. So yes, thank you. That's great introduction, Cam. Yeah, I had to spend a couple unexpected days with one of my kids in the hospital, but all is well. We are on the mend. He's doing great. So, but appreciate Cam being flexible. So sorry, everybody, we missed the Wednesday show, but we're back and we're gonna hit it. We're gonna hit it anyway, because we go hard, right, Cam?
You know it, and it's really good to hear that everything is on the mend. Now, for today, we're gonna hit on some of the games from last week. As always, gonna go over our upset pick predictions, and then we're gonna hit just a couple of the games from this upcoming week. Make sure Alex gets the chance to rest his voice, but as always, we're still gonna give our upset picks. But before we hop into it, I want to just talk about the trade deadline real quick, because I know we said we touch on that last week, and we had a few days to really absorb the information and what happened. It's not just initial reactions, right? I know there were a lot of very positive reactions, a lot of very negative reactions, sometimes both from the same fan bases with these trades that happen. So I just want to touch on them. And Alex, go with you. Yay, nay?
Yeah,
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. So I have to start with the Commanders because they made the biggest splashes, so to speak, and they are my team. So yeah, we're going to start there. Now, they traded away both Montez Sweat and Chase Young, and I just wanted to share my thoughts on this because I've heard a lot of negativity from especially from the more casual viewers who know the names, not really the contract situations and whatnot. So both Chase Young and Montez Sweat were on the last year of their contracts. And right now, we're paying our interior defensive line over $40 million a year on average. We simply were not going to be able to pay either one or both of them. And if anyone's watching the games, there's some highs, some lows, but it's very clear that we're not going to be making the Super Bowl this year, right? So if we're not going to make the Super Bowl this year, we're probably having new management, or at least some new coaches next year. Then what do you do with your players who are just going to leave the organization? Well, I think you sell them, right? And we ended up getting a second round pick for Montez Sweat's probably going to be a top 40 pick if the season continues as is, which is excellent, I think. Excellent return for Sweat. And then the other one, Chase Young. Now, we got a compensatory third round pick, which is, I'm not personally that thrilled with the return, but I don't blame them at all for making the move, right? Because you're at least guaranteeing yourself that compensatory third pick, which, depending on the contract he signs in the offseason and whatnot, we may have gotten a compensatory pick back, but this at least guarantees it. And it seems like they all went out on good terms. Montez Sweat had a very nice, heartfelt note to Washington. So it doesn't seem like there's any bad blood there. It is a bummer to see our first round picks leave. Teams love getting their talent in, and then if they perform, you pay them, and that's just good practice for any organization. Makes players want to come to you, but it's not that simple. It never is. And especially since there are probably going to be new coaches next year. And we're really building up under Josh Harris now after he bought the team this last offseason. I think it was a very good move to do. And then from the other team's perspective, we'll start with San Francisco because that is a lot easier to determine value from an outside perspective. San Francisco does pretty much everything well. They do most things perfectly with this coaching regime and this management. But the one thing they don't do well is draft. and they don't draft third round picks well specifically. Kind of a funny trend with Kieran Davis Price and Danny Gray and Trey Sermon, Ambry Thomas. Who they take this last year? They took a kicker, right, with one of their three. And they just don't really seem to draft that well. They develop talent well, and I think that Chase Young, who's having a pretty, I'm going to say stellar season because of his pressure, the amount of pressure he's able to rack up. It's not top tier, but it is very good, exceeding expectations going into the season for him. I think he's going to dominate on that base 4 front over there in San Francisco. So I think that was a great move for them. Now for Chicago, getting Montez Sweat, that one's a little more interesting because Sweat is a very good base end. He is a good run defender. He plays his assignments well, and he's disciplined. But he's not this collapse the pocket, quick twitch off the edge, kind of, pin your ears back and fly at the quarterback kind of guy. And there are a lot of great pass rushers in this upcoming edge class. Now, any that'll be around by about pick 40, you don't really have your pick in the litter then. So if they wanted to use their 2 first-round picks, which will probably be early, on some offensive pieces, potentially a quarterback in there, and then they want an impact defensive lineman that they don't think they could get in the second, then it makes sense, right? So you definitely have to view it from the lens of, maybe the value didn't seem like the best, but if you think about it from an outside or sort of a higher level perspective of what could have happened with that pick, then, if they extend him, they have the cap to do so, certainly. It probably is going to turn out well for them. So overall, pretty good moves, some values in question here and there. But, Alex, I know you don't really have a voice right now, but any thoughts on either side of these trades?
No, I think it made sense, and I think you covered it well, Cam. I would say one thing that was a little surprising to me was even though Sweat went for a second rounder and then Young went for a third rounder, that San Francisco third rounder, I mean, that's probably going to be a really late third round pick.
Well, it's a compensatory third, so it's already
so it's even
after
later.
The third round, yeah.
Right. And then you look at that second round pick, and that was that should be a much higher pick, and because it's not like the Bears are going to win. I mean, 4 games, maybe 5 at most. So, that is interesting to me that's going to be a good, 40, potentially 50 players in between those 2 picks. So I think the gap was the most surprising part to me.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Again, the value for each of them was surprising. Most fans thought that we would not be able to get that much for Sweat, which was a pleasant surprise. And then the Young trade coming after this Sweat trade is what really made it that much more surprising. If they had reversed order, I don't think people would have been as shocked to see Young go for a third just right off the bat. But to be stacked on top of Sweat like that was a little odd. Now, I don't want to hit every trade, or we'd be here all night if we're going that deep into them. But I do want to touch on a few more. The Buffalo Bills traded for Rasul Douglas, cornerback. I think that's a great trade. They're going for it all again this year, and they have been hit by the injury bug on defense, and particularly cornerback. It's really a weak point in their defense. So just have trading for a solid player who can at least help shore that up, I think is a great trade. Detroit traded for Donovan Peoples-Jones just for some wide receiver depth. Again, they have some good starters, and then that's about it. So a good trade for them. But the big one, the other big trade came in a bit before the trade deadline hit, and by before I mean one day. It felt like a long time when everything was going on. But the Seattle Seahawks traded for Leonard Williams. Now that's a pretty big trade because the Seahawks' biggest weak point at this point in time, in my opinion, really is on defense, is that interior defensive line. They've allocated resources in the draft to the defensive end, to the linebacker, to cornerback, and it seems like they're still getting hit hard up the middle by teams. So trading that much, a second round pick and a fifth round pick for Leonard Williams really immediately shores up that line, and also pretty much confirms that they're going to be extending him for a massive contract. So I'm interested to see what his contract is come this offseason. Any thoughts on that, Alex?
Yeah, I think what that signals to me, Cam, is that the Seahawks really believe they're further along in their rebuild than I think they initially thought. I think once they got rid of Russell Wilson, I think they probably thought it might be a couple down years. But Geno played so well last year. They made the playoffs last year with Geno, and then this year, what they've hit on some draft picks, and clearly they think, especially that the 49ers are kind of slipping lately. So to me, it really looks like the Seahawks really believe that they're in the mix, and why shouldn't they? I think the way that it is right now, they're in first place.
Yeah, and with that note on the 49ers slipping, it seems like a good time to pivot into our upset picks from last week. So I took the Bengals over the 49ers, and I was a bit concerned, but turned out to be a good pick. Bengals did win 31-17, and the 49ers have now dropped 3 straight games, which is very surprising. I just said that they do almost everything well. Well, not over the last 3 weeks, right? So maybe this trade for Chase Young will help just make their defensive line unstoppable. With the old Ohio State teammates coming back with Bosa and Young. So that could be scary if they, if Bosa can help reignite some of Chase Young's flame from college. Alex, how was your pick?
Yeah, well done with that, Cam. And I think that actually takes you back into the winning column. So you're at 4-3.
Yep.
So well done. I'm still sliding, man. I'm lost 3 in a row now. I'm at 2-5. So I picked the Rams over the Cowboys. And that was a very bad pick. That ended up being, that game was over probably by the end of the first quarter. So, which was, also I had Tony Pollard in fantasy and he didn't do anything. Even though Dallas scored all those points. So that takes my record to 2-5. So I need to get a win. I need to get some momentum going back the other direction, because my upset picks aren't looking so good.
Now, I want to give you a chance to recover your voice over the next few days, but I have to ask you, what happened in the Chiefs-Broncos game? And just before you answer, the Broncos won. They beat the Chiefs 24-9.
Yeah, it was surprising. I think it was a little bit of a trap game. I think even the Chiefs are vulnerable to that. They won 16 in a row, against the Broncos, and obviously they got the big game against the Dolphins coming up this week, and the travel to Germany and all that. And it was a weird game. They had some weird turnovers. I think MVS had a fumble that was in the red zone. There was a couple interceptions. Mahomes had like the flu or like a stomach bug or something. It's not excuses, but you're not going to beat a team 20 to 30 times in a row. So it's a division game on the road. The Chiefs played poorly. They had some more drop passes, kind of bit them in the butt again. So yeah, they just played bad, and they'll be fine. It really doesn't impact my concerns for them really long term at all. It's just a bad game, so they'll brush it off and bounce back.
Yeah, they're going to be fine. I don't think anyone in the world has to worry about them right now. So now before moving on to next week, there's just a couple more games I want to touch on. Actually, 3 more. One, first, I don't want to make this the Washington Commanders podcast, but the Eagles beat the Commanders 38-31. Sam Howell looked pretty good that game. And I don't know if you saw, Alex, on the Kelsey podcast, Jason Kelsey was talking about Sam Howell, basically just saying how he is playing very well, which was great to hear from that perspective. I know they always like talking up opponents, unlike Micah Parsons, which we talked about last week. But, that what he was saying was that Sam Howell was able to execute the offense based on whatever the play design might be. He could play with quick timing, hit these quick slants over and over again. He could stay poised in the pocket. It was just fun to hear. Felt good because I was talking to someone earlier today, more of a casual Washington fan, and he was saying, "So, are we getting a new quarterback next year?" And I said, "I don't know, probably not. Unless we have a top 2 pick, something terrible happens. I think they have to fix the offensive line first." He said, "Well, I don't even think Sam Howell starts the full remainder of the season. They're going to bring the backup in." And he couldn't name the backup quarterback. So, not necessarily someone who really knows what they're talking about, but that the majority of fans, they watch the games, they enjoy themselves or don't, and they move on. And just getting sort of a sense of how people think about Sam Howell. This franchise has been hit so much with the number of quarterbacks started. If someone doesn't look great immediately, it's all right, well, time to bring someone else in. And I just want to pump the brakes on that a little bit. So we'll see how the rest of the season goes. Now, the other 2 games I want to touch on before moving on are the one, the Falcons Titans. And I forget the other one. The other one is the Lions Raiders. I'm going to start with the Lions Raiders because we had said last week, just jokingly, the whole Josh McDaniels won't get a plane ride home. Well, neither did his general manager. So Josh McDaniels fired.
You called it.
Yeah. Dave Ziegler, GM, was fired. Mick Lombardi was fired, the offensive coordinator. Davante Adams said it was time for some sort of change. There was a video of them I just saw before this, and playing around in the locker room, playing basketball with a little Nerf ball, just having fun. Hunter Renfrow said, "No more walking on eggshells. We can have fun playing again." So it seems like and there was a headline saying Raiders players seem pretty happy Josh McDaniels is fired. So, everyone saw it coming. They're going to be paying a ton of money to him over the next, couple years.
4 years.
While he sits home, just with his feet up
and with that, Cam, and they still have 4 more years that they're paying Gruden.
Gruden, right?
So the next 4 years, they're paying 2 coaches to stay away.
It's ridiculous. Great money management.
Yeah.
Now, the other part about this game is that Jimmy G hasn't been playing his best. Well, he hasn't been playing the best. He's been playing his best, I'm sure. But Aiden O'Connell is going to be the starting quarterback next week, and that's exciting. They can see what they have in the rookie to determine if they need to make a big change this offseason or not. But I'm rooting for the guy. I always love seeing those late round rookie picks come in and do well, whether it's Purdy or, of course, Hal and now Aiden O'Connell. So that'll be exciting to watch over the next few weeks. Might make Raiders games a bit more fun because I have not enjoyed watching them as much with Jimmy G. Now, the last game I want to touch on before moving on is that Titans-Falcons game. And that is because Will Levis, baby, he came in 4 touchdowns. I don't know if you saw that one touchdown, Alex. I think it was the last one where he was fading back off of his back foot and just threw a perfectly executed pass like 60 yards downfield into the end zone. It just showcased his arm talent, which has always been undeniable, but something that's been extremely impressive, in my opinion, over the last 2 weeks, because we're recording this on Friday. They played Thursday night. Is his intermediate pass accuracy has been superb. I mean, he is dropping dimes in there, and he had such a hard time playing at Kentucky this last year because his supporting cast was so much worse than every other team that they played against. That coming to the NFL is usually a lot harder for people, but it might be easier in some ways for Levis because he actually has some talent around him. Now, his decision making is still questionable. He's still it was his second game as a pro last night, and he did not come through in those clutch moments, but that you can't really expect him to. I think he's shown everything and much more that you could want from bringing in your rookie quarterback to start over a Ryan Tannehill, whose career is probably just about over. All right.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah. Well, Levis looked good. You know, he looked good his first game. He struggled a bit there against Pittsburgh yesterday, but has a lot of talent, you know, for sure.
Yeah. All right, Alex, let's get you talking again. Who is your upset pick of the week in week 9?
All right, so there's a lot of good games. Honestly, I think the slate is probably one of the best weeks we've had as far as just the quality of the matchups. I will say I'm not going to pick this game, but I did have to laugh that we talked about the Raiders and what a dumpster fire they are. Well, they're favored this week against the Giants, so they have no coach, no GM, you know, a rookie quarterback, you know, and somehow they're still favored. I think that's pretty condemning on the Giants. But nevertheless, I'm actually going to go with, you know, I think one of the marquee matchups of the week is the Buffalo Cincinnati game. Right now, Cincinnati is favored by 2, and I'm going to take the Bills. You know, I think the Bills want revenge. They want revenge from that playoff game that they just took a beating. You know, and I think Cincinnati's certainly coming back around. Burrow's looked great the last couple of weeks. We already talked a little bit about their game against San Francisco. So yeah, got things looking up for sure for Cincinnati. But I think the Bills will give them a little bit extra. You know, it's just something that they really want to go out and show that they're still a contender, that they still have a chance at taking the crown in the AFC. So should be a great game. I'm really looking forward to it. Give me the Bills.
All right, I like it. They're on my short list. You know, you said this was going to be a good week because there's some you know, pretty high over unders. There's some intense divisional matchups this week. I had them as one of my options. You know, the over under for Buffalo Cincinnati is only 49.5. I'm really hoping, as just a fan of football in general, that it hits the over, because that would be a pretty fun shootout to watch. But I'm just going to bring up a couple of these other teams before I say mine that were on my short list, because, you know, Miami, Kansas City, that's only a 1.5 point spread.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's close.
It could be anyone's game. It's really hard to bet against Mahomes 2 weeks in a row and just that talented Chiefs team. So I do think Kansas City takes this. And then my the other team or upset pick that I would have selected, if you chose mine, would have been the Rams over Green Bay. You know, it's a 3-point line, and I just think Green Bay is every week they're just looking a little worse and worse to me. They started the season on fire, at least their quarterback Jordan Love did, and it's just been a little bit downhill, a little bit of a disappointing season. So I'm ultimately taking Tampa Bay to upset Houston. You know, it's a 3-point spread. It's a 40-point over under. So theoretically a low scoring game, but, you know, Houston got beat by Carolina last week, you know, and that was Carolina's first win. I think that, you know, Houston has a bit of a weaker secondary, and they're weaker over the middles. And I think that Mike Evans and Godwin are just going to be able to sort of, dominate this Houston secondary. And I don't think Stroud can necessarily keep up against a pretty stout line for Tampa Bay. I know some of their better players have been underperforming a bit, especially Kalijah Kancey has had kind of a bit of a disappointing season. But I think Tampa Bay's just going to take it over Houston. You know, CJ Stroud I'm still rooting for him. He's had a great rookie season so far. But, you know, it's one of those games where it could go either way, and it's an upset pick. So I'm taking Tampa Bay. How do you feel about that?
I like that. Yeah, I like that. On a side note, do you think that CJ Stroud is the front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year?
Easily, right? There's no one else who's come close. You could argue Puka Nacua, right?
Yeah.
It's going to go to a quarterback, right?
Yep.
This year.
Bijan as well, but I mean, I know he's been banged up too. So, you know, importance wise, you probably got to go with CJ.
Yeah, especially since Bijan's not even a workhorse back right now, right? They're giving Algier, I think he has more carries than Bijan on the season up at this point, which is wild. But, you know, you have to ask who's the least replaceable player.
Gibbs would be another guy, at least he's performing, but that's because Montgomery's been hurt, you know.
Well, he had that 1 week, right? Last week was absurd. and thank goodness I took him in my highest yards that little competition I have going on. So I'm crushing that at this point. I can share a little more insight into that in one of these later weeks. But yeah, Gibbs is looking amazing, as everyone expected he would. People didn't like that he was drafted 12th overall, especially since they traded back from pick 6, where if they're taking a first round running back, you could have had Bijan at 6 instead, but they decided to trade back and still get Gibbs when there were so many talented players still on the board. But Gibbs has always been a really good player, and everyone knows it. So it's cool to see him start to pop off here. I think he's going to have a great finish or wrap up to this season.
Yep, makes sense. Cam, I'll go ahead and give you my dumpster fire game.
Yeah.
So this week, it didn't take me too long. There was a couple options, but I'm going to go with Colts Panthers. Not a game I want to watch. Poor Bryce Young, no weapons running around there. Got the win last week, but still just not a little bit of a tough watch. And, Gardner Minshew can do a few things here and there, but, well, for all these other marquee matchups, is not one that's high on my list to watch. I don't think either of these coaches are on the hot seat necessarily.
No.
But I don't think that's going to be a great game to watch.
No, I can see that. If Anthony Richardson were playing against Bryce Young, that would be a pretty good headline, or storyline. But with Minshew playing, everyone loves Gardner Minshew, but it's just I can agree with that one. I may have thought you would go the Giants Raiders, but I kind of want to watch the Raiders this week with O'Connell starting and that maybe some reinvigorated players. So if Raiders come out and have a big game, I honestly won't be surprised with how some players react to this kind of adversity throughout the season. Now, with those games, having talked about those games, now let's get into some of the more exciting games. We've briefly discussed the Chiefs and Dolphins, but there's some other great games this week too. So especially the Cowboys and Eagles game, and these divisional games can go any direction, right? Everyone says it. Last week, the Broncos beat the Chiefs. You just never know how it's going to go. And I think this is going to be a very close and very exciting game for the fans. I'm not sure if it'll be as exciting for other outside spectators, because I do expect more of a low scoring affair between these teams and these coaching staffs playing against each other. How do you think this game shapes up, Alex?
Yeah, I think the Eagles will take it. I think the Eagles are still kind of rounding into form. The Cowboys have been really up and down. So I do think it'll be a close game, but I just have more confidence that the Eagles are going to find a way. So I'll take the Eagles.
Yeah, they're just a better team up and down, right? Better overall roster. It's just even they can lose, right? So yep. We'll see how it goes. I have a kind of an odd feeling about this game, but that's the best kind of analytics you can get, right? Your gut. So
that's right.
Well, yeah, not enough to make it my upset pick, especially since it would be rooting for the Cowboys. But it's going to be an interesting watch. And then probably the most fun game. Oh, before I bring it up, Chiefs Dolphins. That's in London, Germany. That's in Europe somewhere.
Yep. It's in Germany. Yep. Germany. First game in Germany. Yep.
Oh man.
Yeah, I was going to jump in earlier, but that's kind of what I was thinking is, I mean, it's going to be fun, a fun game, but like, I just don't even know what to expect. I mean, that's such a far trip, and it's such a far trip, especially for the Chiefs. They're even further, than the Dolphins are. So who knows?
Barely.
Who knows? I mean, yeah, you're right. Yeah. In the grand scheme, not that much, but either way, I mean, I think just with the jet lag and then with the adjustment to playing over there, sometimes I feel like those games, anything can happen. I mean, the Jaguars pretty much dominated the Bills, in their game in London a couple weeks ago. So I think anything can happen, honestly. So I don't really know what to expect, but excited to see the Chiefs, certainly against the Dolphins and first game against Tyreek Hill. So that should be fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I mean that Jaguars-Bills game was 5 points, but it was more.
Yeah, late touchdown by the Bills made it look closer. Yeah,
exactly. For sure. But yeah, that's gonna be a fun game. Now, I'm just wondering, how did these players handle the jet lag? Like, I know that a lot of them get there early in the week, but all this talk about the Jaguars potentially being a London-based team within the next few years, I just can't buy that at all. The logistics of it would just be excruciating. There'd be more injuries that occur just inevitably, right? With fatigue and teams not being able to get in certain rhythms. It's especially for Jacksonville themselves, or I guess the Jaguars themselves, it would just be such a tough adjustment. So I don't see it happening. I know we've briefly talked about it on the show before, but the NFL always wants to make money, and there is an untapped European market. So we'll find out. But yeah, the Chiefs, Dolphins, I don't think that the outlook of the game changes much based on location. I still think it's going to be Mahomes doing Mahomes things, Tyreek doing Tyreek things. And I do think that I used Tyreek instead of Tua intentionally because he's just the dominating force of this team. So it'll be fun. Now, the last game I want to touch on before we do get going, it's going to be a shorter episode today. It's been a tough week, and allow a little bit of rest and come back strong next week. But I want to touch on the Bills-Bengals game because that one is going to be fun and has a lot of fantasy football implications, right? Both those teams, you have Cook against Mixon, right? You have Allen Burrow. Yeah, Allen Burrow. I said that right. Diggs. I'm starting Gabe Davis. I don't know who else is. People start Kincaid. On the other side, you got T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, all these fun fantasy options that are out there each and every week. So I think, and it's a primetime game. It's definitely going to be one of the most watched primetime games of the regular season, I think, just because so much of the non-fans of the teams are just watching for fantasy football purposes. I know it's funny how a lot of coaches don't like fantasy football, like Belichick and Arthur Smith. They just hate fantasy football. It's like, man, that's like half your viewers, right? That's half your money coming from
for sure.
fantasy football. So I get it where, decision making should never be impacted by what people want you to do for fantasy, but there's no reason to hate on it.
Yeah. But it doesn't anyway. You know what I mean? Like coaches do things all the time that negatively affect someone in fantasy because they don't care. And I don't think they should either, right?
Exactly. They shouldn't.
So it's like, I agree. It's like you can not let it affect you, but you don't have to rag on it when that's one of the reasons you get paid what you get paid.
Right. I mean, Latavius Murray coming in for the Bills just shows that they don't care about fantasy, right?
Right.
So,
true.
On the goal line. But who do you think takes this? Oh, wait. You took this as your upset pick.
I did. Yeah, I took the Bills.
Okay. Yep. We already know. I think it's going to be close. It was hard for me to take the Bengals to upset the Niners last week and then root against them this week. So
I hear you.
That's ultimately why I didn't choose them. But as I did say earlier, they're on my short list. I do think the Bills could take this. But once again, high flying affair would be fun. All right, Alex, any other teams you want to touch on? Anything else you want to discuss before hitting the road?
No, I mean, I think we really covered a lot of it. It's a little bit of a shorter episode this week. But overall, it's still a lot of fun and thanks for giving me a chance to get my voice back. And like you said, we'll be back next week, should be back at our normal time. And, we'll have a nice longer show for you guys, breaking down, a lot of these exciting games.
Yeah. And at the very end of next show, I do want to touch on some of these upcoming draft prospects once again, now that I've gotten, my big board out and am really watching a lot more closely. I just want to spend a few minutes talking about maybe some of the lesser known players who are likely to fly up over the course of the next couple months when people start getting into the film. So just, stick around to the end for that. And besides that, we'll get back to our normal routine next week on either Tuesday or Wednesday evening, posting that Wednesday, either way, probably.
Yep.
And yeah, so that's it for you, Alex.
That's it.
All right, guys. Well, you know where to find us. You can find us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment. I said that backwards, but smash that subscribe button as you do. And we will see you next week. Have a great weekend watching football, guys. We'll see you later. Peace.
Peace.